Madam Speaker, good morning, good afternoon, forgive me. I rise to make what I hope to be some brief observations. The truth is that the Parliament is being asked today to consider a raft of legislation, all touching and concerning similar issues. And I would wish to commend the effort by the Attorney General and his legal team to put this all together. But as with any such attempt, there is sometimes some level of confusion which results. I therefore would like my remarks, Madam Speaker, to be treated as sort of omnibus remarks. I say omnibus because I don't plan on getting up on every bill. I would hope, in fact, this to be the only time that I would rise, bearing in mind that we are currently discussing the Smoking Designated Areas Bill 2023. The first observation I will make is to say that I support wholeheartedly the effort that I see being undertaken today. And for all the reasons that we would have heard, I don't necessarily agree with all the reasons, but for all the reasons we would have heard, I think that the time has come. The United Nations had hitherto classified marijuana, cannabis, as a very dangerous drug, among other drugs such as heroin, cocaine, etc. And I believe it was in 2020 or thereabouts that it was reclassified to recognize that it had some medicinal value. But I note that the classification of it as being harmful was still retained. And so I share some of the sentiments expressed by the member from Nevis 6. KITTS 6, forgive me. Nevis doesn't have a 6 yet. KITTS 6. We have, in my opinion, Madam Speaker, been, how should I say, tinkering, let me use that language, tinkering around with cannabis for some time. It started under the previous administration, which for 7 years, in my respectful view, and I say nothing here that I didn't say then, and in the cabinet that I was a member of, we moved too slowly on this whole issue of cannabis. It seems to me that we need, as a country, to take a decision. We either going to do it, or we're not going to do it. But instead we keep coming and we keep tinkering. Touch a little piece here, touch a little piece next year or the year after. And I really feel that we need to really be bold in what it is we're going to do. And we have that right. In fact, my research suggests that countries such as Uruguay and Canada have made that leap, and they have not reported that they have suffered as a consequence of legalizing marijuana. We have many states in the United States. My research suggests that a number of 15 of the 50 states have legalized marijuana. And we have, of course, some areas of the world like Amsterdam, which are quite famous, where people visit for, among other things, marijuana. I know, for example, that even in a city as close to us as Miami, that one can now purchase edibles and other things. And these are the things I have been told. I want to emphasize. So, Madam Speaker, I feel that I want to support what's happening today, as my colleagues on this side thus far have done. I want to associate myself with the comments that have been made, but I also want to sound the signal that I feel that it is time that we decide where we're going to go on the bigger question of the legalization of cannabis. I feel that the bill today is unfortunate in a few respects. One, it has elicited a debate about smoking. Smoking is a sort of generic concept. So the honorable mover, the member for number 8, spoke about cannabis. The other doctor, the honorable member from number 6, spoke about smoking, cigarettes, and tobacco. We heard about Rastafarian. We heard about others who smoke. I grew up around a lot of Rastafarians. I grew up in an area called Brownhill in Nevis. And a lot of Rastafarians I know don't smoke cigarette. In fact, some of them that I know look down on the smoking of cigarette. Cigarette is something that's bad. Ganja is a sacrament, so that's something that's good. But in a way, the Parliament, in trying to address what I think is necessary, is saying a smoking area. So them who smoke ganja, them who smoke cigarette, them who smoke pipe, them who smoke, what else people smoke? Tobacco, vapor, them who smoke all kind of things, they'll end up in the same area. Wouldn't it be something if the Rasta man said, don't blow your cigarette smoke in my face, you know? That would be something. The move of the bill, the member for number 8 made a very valid point, taking me back to the earlier point I was seeking to make about a broader question. When he referred to the judgment of the High Court, is it Sankofa matter, I think, and made the point that really the court has already shown us the way in relation to this plant that has created so much debate over the centuries. A plant that grows naturally, that is cannabis. So, in a way, we already have some guideposts being provided by the High Court in terms of the constitutionality or otherwise of some of the things that we are doing or trying to do. And it is really for us now as a country. But let me be clear that while I advocate that we must take that decision, that of the 195 countries represented at the UN, my research suggests that 143 of them still treat cannabis as illegal, including most of Africa, most of the Middle East, and Asia. So we would be among a minority of countries globally that would set our foot upon this particular path of legalization if the government were to so decide that that is what we should do. But getting back, because I did say omnibus, getting back to the specifics of the smoking designated areas bill, I said something across the floor when the member for number 6 was speaking about smoking, and he highlighted some of the dangers of smoking, because clearly the bill is not seeking to make any distinction between cannabis smoking and other smoking. So all smoking is smoking for purposes of the designated area. And he made the point about the effects of smoking. In fact, he pointed out those who might be asthmatic and that it could be life-threatening for those people if exposed to smoke. And I asked the question, well, how do you protect them even with a designated area? Because in my mind, here's what I'm thinking. I too want to go to the music fest. But I'm thinking you have an area, and we come in here Tuesday, we're going to pass this thing, music fest start Thursday. So everybody home right now wrapping a spliff to go to music fest. And them who don't smoke ganja, buying the cigarette, they're getting the tobacco for the pipe, they're getting the cigar. Madam Speaker, you smoke cigars? Okay, I'm just curious. It's very strong. I said that to say that if the designated area is not set up correctly, then you may have people, yes, crowded into an area, smoking different things, but the pall of smoke could blow anywhere, depending on what direction the wind blows in. So you may be asthmatic, but decide you want to go music fest to enjoy yourself. You buy your ticket and you say, I don't want to be in any designated smoking area, so let me go to an area that is not. But the smoke reaches you anyway. I am not saying that to suggest that what we're doing should not be done. I'm saying that to suggest that what we're doing needs, in my view, additional thought applied to it. To say, well, how are we going to achieve this? I know, for example, that when I go to some places elsewhere, and there's a smoking area, it's actually a closed area. So you go inside a room, the door is closed. So the people who do not wish to partake in smoking aren't impacted. But when we're talking about a venue like Music Fest or Tropics or Breaking Dawn or any of these big fits that can now apply for, huh? I'm just asking, these are questions I think are legitimate questions. Because you're now telling people, listen, you could go in a section this or so. And you could smoke all night if you want to smoke. So what moved to me if I'm in this section here so and the wind blowing this way? This is why I'm saying that sometimes we get what I refer to as unintended consequences from legitimate efforts, because I will not decry the legitimacy of what is being attempted today, of how we can deal with that. That's a practical matter. And so I would hope that as we implement the legislation, we try to implement it in such a way as to avoid what the Honorable Senator spoke about when she recounted her story of being at the football game.
I said a sporting event.
Sporting event, sorry. Sporting event, not a football game. So, some important points were raised, Madam Speaker, today in my view, about health implications of smoking. Some people, even those who smoke ganja, seem to be of a view that, listen, you know, there are no health implications. I've been told that. But, again, and I'm not an expert, I will defer to the doctors. But I look at some of the research that I have done, and it says that marijuana or cannabis it creates a high naturally. And he said it can cloud your senses and judgment. The effects can differ depending on things like how potent it was, how you took it, and how much you've used in the past. So if somebody is a new user, come Thursday, Friday, Saturday, the impact on them might be different to somebody who are accustomed to using. If somebody decides they're going to ingest it via an edible, although we're not necessarily dealing with that in this debate, the impact might be different to somebody who smokes it. Or drink it in the tea, as I'm hearing. So, it really depends, it appears, Madam Speaker, on quantity, potency, and whether or not you're accustomed to it. So, this is an important aspect of this that the bill cannot deal with. It's not as if somebody will stand at the gate to ask a man, well, how much spliff you have, where you buy it, what the potency is. This bushweed or this is kush? What is this? I hear people laughing. I read about these things, you see. So, the question is to get a sense of what the impact is going to be. Now, where am I going with this? Hear what this thing says. It can heighten your senses. Colors might seem brighter, sounds might seem louder. It can distort your sense of time. It can hurt your motor skills, make driving more dangerous. It can lower your inhibitions, so you may have, well, it's talking about other matters. The point I'm trying to make, you see, is this. You don't realize that? The point I'm trying to make is this. I am now using a practical thing. Government is trying to create some balance. And let's face it, every music festival and every event, people are smoking. So the government has properly said, let's try and get an area where you go if you want to smoke, you don't affect people who don't want to smoke. I don't think anything objectionable about that. But the practicality of it now, people feel, okay, government say we can smoke in this area here, So we're going Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and we're going to smoke. 4 o'clock, Burner Boy just finished. Everybody smoking because I'm sure some going to be smoking and drinking too. So, we all leave the venue. And when we leave the venue, we're saying that our sense of time might be distorted. It may hurt our motor skills and making driving a bit more dangerous for us. Who's going to police that? Huh? So they're going to have people on the road policing to check whether a man too high to drive? You see, I am concerned. Responsibilities of our person cultivating possession of smoking. We all know what our responsibilities might be, you know. I'm simply saying that when a man leaves the venue of Music Fest and gets into his vehicle and has been enjoying his designated area and smoking all night, he now need to get from up here where the Music Fest is. What is the name? Huh? Designated driver? You see, they help me make the point I'm trying to make. Because I have always advocated that we need to launch in this country a massive education campaign about ganja, about cannabis. Absent that education campaign, I'm now hearing we must get designated driver, we must do this, we must do that. But if the man out there is of a view that this is safe because other people say so, nothing is wrong. You use cocaine and crack and think that's bad, but if you use ganja, you're safe. And people leave the Music Fest up there and get into their vehicles now to go and drive home, thinking that they're safe. And they must get from up there all the way to Sandy Point, or Old Road, or wherever.
Madam Speaker, a point of clarification. Point of order, sorry. Clarification.
I recognize the Honorable Senator, Dr. Clark.
Sorry, it might be unsafe to presume that a designated smoking area increases risk associated with cannabis, because with or without a designated smoking area, the risk remain. Also, the designated, where the argument, what I'm trying to follow, is suggesting that the designated smoking area is going to be problematic. What we're doing is speaking to giving smokers a space away from non-smokers. So we're protecting. We're not giving smokers a space to over-smoke or to get higher to do. They're going to smoke. So that's a line that we should follow, not saying a designated smoker is going to increase the chance of smoking or increase the risk associated with smoking cannabis. They will be there with or without the designated smoking area. This bill is about protecting non-smokers and allowing smokers their right to smoke away from non-smokers. That is a safer argument.
So I believe that I am allowed to make my argument.
Yes,
And the Honorable Senator,
yes,
no doubt, is allowed to make hers. The point I'm seeking to make, you see, we know people will do all kinds of things. Whether those things are right or wrong, people will do, because people have choice. God made Adam and Eve. What did he tell Eve? Adam, he didn't even tell Eve. Adam, do not eat from that tree. Adam let Eve fool him, and we've been paying the price ever since. Eve fooled Adam. Eve was who ate from the tree and then persuaded Adam. The serpent persuaded Eve. Y'all didn't go Sunday school, you know, y'all don't know how this thing works. Right? Let me forget about the Adam and Eve story. I believe I'm outnumbered, so I will leave that. What I am trying to say is that we're taking a formal step today. And let me reiterate, I think it is a correct step. But we're taking a formal step today, which, regardless of what people might have done in the past, we are now saying to people that, listen, the government, the parliament, the law is saying that you now have this right in this particular area. So whereas before man might have been hiding and going behind the booth somewhere to take a 1-2 puff. He's not hiding now. He doesn't have to. He is in open. And let's face it, I think that with the designated area and the fact that you can now smoke without there being any infringement of the law, that it might encourage others to come and it might encourage others to imbibe more. Some people who maybe used to take a little thing before they go to the festival, they're going to now bring what they're bringing with them to enjoy it at the festival. And we're saying that that is perfectly proper. I'm not arguing with that at all. I am simply saying that now that we're taking this formal step, what happens when the festival is over and people take to our roads? And I think it's a legitimate concern. It's no different to when we say people go and drink excessively alcohol, and what happens when they get on our roads. I am speaking to the need for us, not just to say that we are separating smokers from non-smokers, but to recognize that what we're doing might have other implications, and so there is a need for public education. That is only the point I'm making. Because, Madam Speaker, we have come here time and time again, going back to my word, and tinkered with the law. But I have not seen the rollout to say to our people, this is the possible impact. These are the effects. You're going to put up a sign and you're going to say, smoking is dangerous. Or I see on some of the cigarette boxes, smoking kills. And you say, we find ourselves caught on the horns of a dilemma. Because on the one hand, we know, based on what the doctors in here are telling us, that smoking is harmful. It kills, causes all kinds of problems. And the Minister of Health, who is also the Prime Minister and mover of this bill, I'm sure acknowledges that there's that potential for medical issues to arise. But on the other hand, we are, in a way, treating with what is already happening in the society, and the discrimination that some have endured as a consequence of their faith. That is why I'm saying that perhaps the debate as it is framed today is a little unfortunate, because I would have preferred to have a wholesome debate about Rasta and faith and their rights. But instead of that, we are debating smoking. I understand that. I'm talking about the designated smoking bill here. We're talking about smoking, and that's why I don't say anybody who smoke anything. Even if you smoke B-Bush, you could go into this area here. Whatever you smoke, you can go into this area to smoke it. So, I raise the issue of public education. I heard a good suggestion about designated driver and all of that. How do our police deal with a situation? Do we even have the capacity to detect if somebody is probably over a limit? For alcohol, they have a breathalyzer test. I don't know what they use for ganja. Whether they have a similar test, I don't know. Would our police be equipped if somebody is driving on the roads in a way that is endangering others? The fines. Again, looking at the range of legislation, I said I don't propose to stand up again. I feel the fines are too low. Well, I'm just saying, it's a matter. I see fines as low as 50 EC dollars in some. And the person gets to keep their cannabis and then fine $50. Some it goes to $500, and then some I see in this act, I believe it's $1,000. I believe if you're going to now make a provision for people and create a legal framework for people to do something, then the fines for them to step outside that framework should be serious enough that it acts as a deterrent. Fining a man $50 for breaching something. The man may well say, how much a music fest ticket cost? 150? $50 that ain't nothing, you go in the crowd and smoke. Right? Well, I see something here in one of the bits says a $50 fine. All I'm saying is, I would really wish that the penalty is such that it acts as a serious deterrent. That people will say, you know what, let me go in the designated area. The government and the law provides me with an option, let me use that option. Instead of deciding, let me go and smoke wherever I want to smoke. I think that that is important. The licensing regime. there's a licensing regime running throughout the legislation, Madam Speaker. In this piece of legislation we're now considering, the designated areas, I see the medical CMO, Chief Medical Officer, being the designated authority. I look again throughout some of the others, I see the Ministry for Faith-Based, what do you call it? Faith-Based Affairs. So when we're dealing with Rastafari, that's the ministry. We're dealing with freedom of conscience, cannabis, that's the ministry. For me, there's an element of unnecessary confusion. We ought to decide which is the entity responsible for licensing people or businesses to allow marijuana, ganja, cannabis use. And there be a single entity. Well, you said they're separate, but that's the point I'm trying to make. I understand what the government is trying to do now. Don't get me wrong. But you have, if you're a Rasta, you're going to go to Ministry of Faith-Based. If you're seeking some permission under the cannabis freedom of conscience, we don't get to that yet, you go to the faith-based. But if you want a spot of a music festival, you got to go to the CMO.
Just like the public health handles permit, you go to public health, and if you want a business license, you can.
No, I don't think it's the same. At the same ganja, everybody wants smoke. No, so you say, so the Rasta man who's going to go up music fest, he's a different smoking to the Rasta man who said, this is my sacrament, so I'm going to smoke. So he's going to go to CMO if he wants permission to go up music fest and smoke.
No,
but
no,
just for the area. Just for the area, because she's the one that deals with public health.
I'm listening to her and I get more confused over here. So I could imagine Joe Public out there. I'm saying it one entity. All who want to use marijuana, ganja, cannabis, weed, whatever it name, go to one entity. This, I'm here, I want a license. I want permission. When a man shows up and a man comes to the CCMO, say, oh no, that's not for me. Go down to the ministry for that. Another man go to the ministry, no, you're the wrong place. Go up to the CMO for that. I think these are things that would benefit from just streamlining and not leading to any difficulties. I soon finish, Madam Speaker. The licensing. Some of the legislation seems to suggest that the license is 2 years. But then the same legislation then goes on to suggest the license expires on December 31st of each year. The two can't be correct.
Sorry, say that again.
So some of the legislation seems to suggest that the license that you get is for 2 years. In other parts, it seems to suggest that the licenses expire on December 31st of each year. I'm saying the two things cannot be correct. And I would suggest respectfully that just like a business license is a 1 year thing, that the license should be 1 year. Renewable each year. So a man who, for example, has a bar, restaurant, a area for parties or whatever, and he wants a designated area, when he comes to get his business license and he renews that, he renews the designated smoking areas license at the same time. So I think the Parliament, well, the government, having the majority, needs to make a determination on that. So, Madam Speaker, I support the effort. I think that it is a move in the right direction. If the government can put in place, whether through regulation or through practical application, the measures to protect people who are not interested or have no desire to smoke, and further, those who may have medical conditions that could be adversely affected by smoke. I think that would be important. I think some public education is also critical so that people understand what potential dangers there may be, particularly for new users, particularly for those who are using high-grade strains as opposed to what I'm told colloquially is referred to as bushweed. I believe that that is also important. And that we start to have a public conversation. It might, in fact, Madam Speaker, assist us in taking the ultimate decision, which I hope in my lifetime we will take, to just say, listen, it is time for us to legalize cannabis. It really is. Other countries are doing it, and we now have the benefit of their experience. And it would really free up law enforcement and others to focus on other things. So I really want to say that the bills are welcome. I'm not going to stand up against or supporting everything. They're welcome, but I think in terms of our fine regime, in terms of the licensing regime, in terms of practical protections, in terms of education, so that people understand that we're not going to have any carnage on the roads and that kind of thing when people leave these events. I believe that those are important considerations as we walk down this path, and it is my hope that we walk down the path a bit faster than we're walking right now, so that we don't become the 195th country in the world to legalize. Because so far, at this space, I believe we might become the last country in the world to legalize cannabis. I think the time has come, for all the reasons that the mover said. All the pressures and the difficulty and the victimization and the discrimination that people have endured. I think the time has come for us to take a bold step. Today is not the time for that. I recognize that. But I would make those observations whilst, as I say, supporting the effort and hoping that what we're doing today, Madam Speaker, will be down to the benefit of our country, and will say to all of our people that everybody in this country matters, and everybody must have a space in this country of St. Kitts and Nevis. May it please you.
Thank you to the honourable member for Nevis 9.